I had reached my breaking point. I could literally feel my face transforming into a demon-like scowl. Then my husband was like, "Hey, what's with that face? Got any complaints? Frankly, it's your fault for only being able to do so much. Someone like me needs a proper wife. If you can't cook, then just get out from this house." At this point, anything he said wouldn't faze me. "So, you're saying that? Fine. Are you prepared to be a homeless?" With a chuckle, my husband was confidently like, "That's never gonna happen." He looked at me with a mocking smirk. "But you know, acting like that will only last for now. Reality isn't always that kind. My name's Jessica, and I just turned 35 last week, a homemaker. After graduating from college, I landed a full-time job at a major company. I worked there for 3 years, but after marrying, I resigned and now work part-time in an office at a nearby supermarket. My husband, at the time, worked in the same company. His name's Brian. I first met Brian at the company's year-end party shortly after joining. I had always had a reason to skip these parties, but that time, there were spots, so I joined in. "Jessica, nice to meet you. I'm Brian Thompson. Let's enjoy the party together." "Oh, yes, nice to meet you." Among the bosses and colleagues around us, Brian confidently introduced himself. Even though it was a year-end party, I thought he had a lot of guts. And, surprisingly, he even knew my name. Although we worked at the same company, we were in different departments and had never met or spoken before. Well, I figured someone must have told him. This brought Brian and me closer, and we gradually began to take lunch breaks together. After getting to know him better, I realized that Brian was a confident person, always eager to move forward no matter what. The company we worked for was the biggest in this area, employing over 1,000 people. In such a large company, I was increasingly drawn to Brian's confidence and his approach to work. Then one day, "Jessica, will you be my girlfriend? I promise I'll make you happy. I'll always cherish you. Always." He didn't really have to go that far. But still, his earnest feelings made me happy. "Yes, I can't wait to spend more time with you. Please make sure you keep that promise, okay? Promise." And so, we became a couple. Supporting and challenging each other, we deepened our relationship. Our bond with each other's families also grew stronger. One day 2 years after we started dating, "Jessica, let's get married. I promise I'll make you happy. With me, you'll always be happy." His confidence never changed. I couldn't help but let out a small chuckle at Brian's words. "Yes, please make sure of it." We got married. We were blessed by many people around us, and our future was filled with nothing but hope. Then Brian had another surprise in store. "Actually, I bought a house. I wanted to make you happy, Jessica." That was a big surprise. Brian had bought a house for our married life. "Are you sure? Can you handle the mortgage?" "No worries. I'm a top-notch employee," Brian said with full confidence. I truly felt grateful for marrying Brian. And I strongly believed we'd build a happy home together. However, within a month of our marriage, his true nature surfaced. He had an enormous pride and was a dominant husband, the kind you rarely see these days. He was always like, "Men don't do household chores, that's a woman's job. I think you understand, now that you're a housewife, you gotta handle everything. Don't use the excuse that you're working." I couldn't believe he was this type of person. His side that he never showed before marriage left me in shock. He was like, "I was actually gonna show you this on our wedding day." Rummaging through his bag. "Found it." He pulled out a piece of paper and showed it to me. "What, a divorce procedure?" "Don't be so shocked. I just had it prepared in case something happened. Don't worry, I doubt we'll ever use it." It was a document which indicates divorce procedure and the lawyer's contact. Seeing the paper made me anxious about our future. From that day, our supposed-to-be happy marital life took a turn. Whenever Brian returned home from work, I had to immediately go to the front door and greet him, no matter what. or else Brian would get in a bad mood. Furthermore, he'd just take off his jacket and leave it without fixing it by himself. "Hey, can you stop tossing your jacket after taking it off?" He was like, "Huh? Isn't that the wife's job? It's not something a husband who's worked all day should do." As he stomped into the living room, throwing his bag onto the couch and stripping off his shirt right there, he'd be always like, "Make sure it doesn't get wrinkled. Put the bag where it always goes." I wish he'd just do it himself, but if I said that, he'd instantly get upset. In the end, I'd end up tidying everything without saying a word. This wasn't what I had in mind, and I let out a heavy sigh. "I feel like taking a shower first today. The bathroom's cleaned up, right?" "What? You're gonna take a shower before dinner? You usually eat first, so I was about to clean the bathroom now." Brian seemed to snap at my words, hurling harsh words at me. "When did I ever say that I want dinner first after work? Don't make assumptions on your own." "But..." "Don't talk back. You're my wife, right? Make sure you do things to always keep me in a good mood." After saying that, Brian grumbled and headed to the bedroom. It's such a hassle when he gets like this. If things don't go his way, he'd angrily storm off to the bedroom, lock himself in, and wouldn't come out. His behavior was just like a child. Naturally, if I don't apologize, he'd stay this way forever. "I'm sorry. I should have been more considerate of your feelings. I promise I'll do better next time, please forgive me." That's how I end up, standing in front of the bedroom door, apologizing to Brian. Then, the bedroom door opened, and through the gap, Brian's face glared at me. "If you understand, that's fine. But there won't be a next time." I nodded vigorously, and Brian emerged from the bedroom with a smile. Such incidents had become an everyday occurrence. Fast forward a month. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed in the back of my head. And the noise kept growing louder. In that instant, I found myself on the couch. Thinking back to the previous day, I vaguely remembered. Oh, I must have fallen asleep right here on the couch. I had dozed off on the couch. The daily grind of work and household chores had unknowingly piled on fatigue. Lifting my exhausted body, I checked my phone and saw it was already past 8 a.m. "Oh no!" I rushed to the bedroom and shook Brian, who was soundly asleep in bed. "Brian, wake up! You're gonna be late for work!" Brian, looking irritated, slowly sat up and rubbed his sleepy eyes, glancing at his phone by the pillow. "What? 8 a.m.? Why didn't you wake me up?" "I'm sorry, I've been so tired lately. But you need to get ready fast. You're gonna be late." "Are you kidding me? It's your job to wake me up. There's no way I can get ready in time now. I've never been late once. What if I get fired because of this? How are you gonna take responsibility?" I had never seen Brian this furious before. No matter how much I apologized, Brian's anger showed no signs of abating. Instead, it seemed to intensify, and it reached a point where nothing I said would calm him down. "Listen. As a punishment, clean the whole house today. If I come back and find even a speck of dust, I'll kick you out right away." With those harsh words, Brian left for work. Even if it was my mistake, I'm exhausted too. I wish he'd show a little concern for me. But the more I think about it, the more I hate myself for not being able to say anything. There's one person I always turn to in times like this. "Morning, Mom. Sorry for calling so early. Can I come over?" "Morning, Jessica." "That's fine. You're off work today?" "Yeah, I was scheduled to have the day off." "All right. I'll prepare some coffee and wait for you. Take care on your way." "Sorry, and thank you." My mother seemed to notice something was different with me. "Did you and Brian have a fight?" "Why do you ask?" "You don't sound cheerful. And Jessica, whenever something's bothering you, you tend to apologize a lot. I've watched you more closely than anyone. It's obvious." "Yeah." Her kind words brought tears to my eyes. Knowing this, she was like, "I'll be waiting for you, and hung up. After quickly getting ready, I headed to my parents' home. My mother had coffee and cookies prepared. The moment I saw her face, all my pent-up emotions spilled out, and I burst into tears. And yet again, I apologized over and over. How much had built up inside me? Regardless, I just poured out everything. My mother listened patiently, nodding along, without showing any signs of irritation. Thanks to that, by the time I left, I was back to my usual cheerful self. "Thanks, Mom. I'll be back soon." "Yeah, take care on your way." When I got home, I immediately started cleaning. I'll be damned if I let Brian have the last word. I'll clean till I'm satisfied. 5 hours went by. Yeah. This should be good. I cleaned every nook and cranny of the house. There's no way Brian can find fault with this. Nodding in approval of my cleaning, I was like, "What's next?" I rolled up my sleeves and headed to the kitchen to start making dinner. Brian would be home soon. I had to get it done before that. And after about 2 hours of cooking, the sound of the front door opening broke the silence. Brian was home. I quickly went to greet him at the door. "Welcome home." I proudly displayed the immaculate home in front of Brian, as if to say, "Look at what I've done." Yet, he didn't say a word, just headed to the bedroom, changed, and came back out. "Hey, dinner. It's ready. Eat it while it's hot." Of course, dinner was also perfect. The table was lined with elaborate dishes. I had just made it in time. Even I couldn't help but admire how much I'd accomplished. I thought Brian surely couldn't find fault. However, Brian didn't show any reaction to the feast in front of him. He just began eating in silence. "How's the taste?" "I tried harder with today's meal than usual." His response was, "Do this every day." What? What do you mean by tried harder? Just do this every day. Did he have any idea how long this all took? I'd spent the entire day cleaning the house and preparing this lavish meal, and still. His words were so cold that I was left in shock. He barely ate, simply putting down his knife and fork. Brian then got up, went to the sofa, and started watching TV. "Aren't you going to finish?" He ignored me. "All right, I'll wrap it up and put it in the fridge, so eat it when you're hungry." Then, yet again, I heard cold words from Brian. "No one's gonna eat that. Just toss it." I could see the smile on my face turn into one of despair at Brian's words. "What are you doing? Throw it away already. If you won't, I will." With that, Brian began to get up. "Wait, okay, I got it." I thought it'd hurt less if I threw it away myself. Without a word in response, I threw the dish into the trash can. The moment I did, my husband smirked at me. He was like, "Man, I'm beat today. I think I'll take a quick bath and maybe watch a movie. Oh, forgot to mention, I had a burger with my boss earlier." With that, he promptly headed to the bathroom. Everything made sense with Brian's words. He never intended to eat the meal I made in the first place. And the fact he said he'd clean the house was probably just a way to mess with me. If I hadn't cleaned, he would have just gotten mad. And if I had, he'd just complain it wasn't done right. My husband's earlier laughter said it all. Thinking back on it, the regret bubbled up. What am I even doing? As I tried to hold back my tears while doing the dishes, Brian came out of the bathroom. He plopped down on the couch and demanded a beer. I got some snacks and a can of beer from the fridge and brought them over. Brian, completely unaware of my tears, happily watched a movie, enjoying his beer and snacks. "Hey, bring me another beer." "I'm sorry, that's the last one." "What? Only one beer left? You're kidding me. Here's some cash, go buy some now." He pulled out $50, throwing it at me. Picking up the dropped cash, I headed to a nearby liquor store. Maybe it was because the days have been getting warmer, but it was still slightly bright outside. As I walked alone, I felt like passers-by were looking at me. They must be looking at me with the same disdain Brian does. Through my life with Brian, I felt I had lost my sense of self. The next day, the sound of my alarm woke me up. Right. I fell asleep here again. I was on the couch. I was too afraid to sleep in the same room as Brian. As I let out a deep sigh, I sensed someone near me. Startled, I looked up to see Brian, already dressed in his suit. Oh. Good morning. I was out of it. I was so groggy just after waking up. Brian looked down at me from above. Then, he made a comment. You're a failed wife. First thing after waking up, he was making sarcastic remarks at me. Still feeling dazed, I muttered an apology. But with a smug expression, my husband continued with his sarcasm. Can you make a decent dinner tonight? I can't take another terrible meal like yesterday. With that, he left the house with an unsettling grin. The moment Brian left for work and I was alone, I felt a little lighter. Without a doubt, the stress from him was weighing me down. The thought of enduring this stress every day made me feel trapped, and I started feeling that being here was a bad thing. However, even so, as his wife, I still have to do housework. I pushed myself to start the usual chores. Time flew by, and before I knew it, it was 5 p.m. Brian would be home soon. I prepared dinner while keeping an eye on the clock, ready for my husband's return. He finally came home. I went to greet him at the door as usual. Welcome home. Brian immediately responded. After a tiring day at work, I have to come home to a terrible meal? This is torture. His sarcasm, right after returning. But this sarcasm set something off inside me. Oh, right. Makes sense. Suddenly, I felt light as a feather. I headed to the living room, placing the freshly prepared food on the table. Brian, having changed his clothes, approached. Looking at the dishes laid out, he was like, "For a wife of a top executive like me, this is the best you can cook? You're failing as a wife." Saying this, he ate standing up. There was no decency in his actions. And he was like, "You know, the presentation and taste of the food are terrible. You're hopeless. It could hurt my chances of promotion." I had reached my breaking point. I could literally feel my face transforming into a demon-like scowl. Then, Brian was like, "Hey, what's with that face? Got any complaints? Frankly, it's your fault for only being able to do so much. Someone like me needs a proper wife. If you can't cook, then just get out from this house." At this point, anything he said wouldn't faze me. "So, you're saying that? Fine. Are you prepared to be a homeless?" With a chuckle, my husband was confidently like, "That's never gonna happen." He looked at me with a mocking smirk. But you know, acting like that will only last for now. Reality isn't always that kind. Just then, Brian's cell phone rang. "Hey." "Yes." "Okay, I'm on my way." It was his boss on the other end. Being a competent worker is tough, always getting invites. The boss wants to grab drinks. Thank goodness. I can avoid your terrible cooking. He quickly changed and left for his night out. Then, I watched him go, coldly. 2 days later, as I dined with a friend, my phone rang from inside my purse. Pulling it out, I saw it was a call from my husband. I muttered like, "Again." Declining the call and slipping the phone back. Truth be told, in the past 48 hours, he'd called nearly 100 times. And every single call was from Brian. My friend asked if I was gonna answer, but I kept brushing it off. I just can't deal with my husband right now. I was aware he'd been trying to reach me, but I was just too busy to answer. And so, it was the same this day too. However, Brian, blissfully ignorant of all this, continued his relentless storm of calls. And tons of emails. Normally, one might become neurotic from such frequency. Ultimately, I didn't answer the phone until another 3 days later. "Can you cut it out? I don't have time to deal with you." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "What do you mean?" "What do I mean? You disappeared from the house without saying anything." He seemed quite panicked about the current situation. It's not without saying anything, is it? After all, since we're getting a divorce, it's only natural for me to leave the house, right? What are you saying now? That time, when Brian cursed the food I made and told me to get out, then went out drinking with his boss right after that day. I immediately packed my belongings and left the house on the same day, placing the divorce procedure document I had on the table and contacted the lawyer.
Don't mess with me. I never said I wanted a divorce.
Indeed, he hadn't said he wanted a divorce. But anyone would consider divorcing after being spoken to like that, repeatedly. It's not about whether you said it or not. Living with you made me decide to divorce.
What do you mean by living with me? In the first place, when did you prepare the lawyer? Without even telling me.
I was shocked that he remembered nothing at all. Even though he did it himself. Don't you remember bringing the document with the lawyer's contact soon after we got married? Oh. Remembered? I just contacted the lawyer and asked to proceed with it.
Huh? That was just a joke. Who the hell takes that seriously?
I'm right here. Besides, it's not something to joke about. Anyway, our life together is over. I don't want to be involved with you anymore, so please don't contact me. Oh, by the way, I will get a lawyer to handle the property division issue later, so wait until then. Saying that, I hung up the phone. However, 2 hours later, Brian took an action that I hadn't expected at all. He came to my parents' house.
I found you. What are you doing walking in here like that?
It's better than divorcing without consent, isn't it? This is exactly what they mean by he has a comeback for everything I say. My words only return in his selfish explanations. This has happened repeatedly. It's just an utterly pointless roundabout. Then my mother, who was sleeping in the back, woke up upon hearing our argument. Enough is enough. This is not the place to argue. With my mother's low and calm voice, Brian fell silent.
All you've been doing is saying what you want to say, but essentially, this is a situation you've caused. I've been tolerating any and every situation just to lead a slightly happier life. I've been holding back on everything, job, housework, just gritting my teeth. What about you? Well, I'm the same. No, actually, I have it tougher. Can you understand the pressures of being an elite?
Understand? What is he talking about? He had absolutely no idea how difficult it has been for me. Right, I'm not an elite, so I can't understand you. But, you see, I had my share of hardships too. So, let me tell you what I've done and how I got here. It might be a good time to put an end to this, especially since my mother is also here. Huh? I presented the reality to my clueless Brian. Do you think we could live in that condo without any trouble? Do you think we could live comfortably on the salary of the elite employee that you claim to be?
That's a given. We could live there because I've been earning the money.
He really didn't understand anything. A deep sigh naturally escaped from me at the incredibly carefree words of Brian. You really don't know anything. That's why everyone, including me, is leaving you. Everyone else too. Jessica. It's fine. He won't understand unless I explain properly. Brian looed like a child who didn't understand a subject and has no idea what to do. But that's only for now. The mortgage for the house is $1,500 every month. Plus utilities, water bills, and other living expenses easily exceed $4,000.
So what? That mere $4,000 can be paid with half my salary.
Is this guy really that dumb? Do you even know how much you actually take home?
Huh? I'm an elite employee at a major company. Obviously, I easily make over $8,000.
For $1,000. That's your net salary. Huh? Whether he was learning this for the first time, my ex-husband was stunned upon hearing his own salary. You call yourself an elite, but you're like the lowest of the low in your company, a perpetual ordinary employee, aren't you? You overrate yourself, assume you're an elite, and consequently, you ignore instructions from superiors you don't like and assign unwanted tasks to others. Despite being overwhelmingly disliked by everyone around you, there's no way such a person can be elite, right?
You're rather a prime candidate for layoffs. By the way, I was told this by your direct boss when I was an employee.
That's a lie. Am I disliked? Brian was barely breathing from just this part of the story. But that alone would not satisfy me.
It's shameful that you spend that mere $4,000 so freely, thinking you're supporting our living with it. Haven't you realized that it's me who has been sustaining our lives until now?
Huh?
In reality, ever since we were married, I was working from home, apart from my part-time job. My husband didn't earn much and spent money freely, being of no help for living expenses. So what to do? I have to work and earn, right? While you were living a foolish life, I worked desperately behind the scenes to keep our life afloat.
That's how I had been supporting our married life.
But honestly, it worked out well. My hobby of drawing illustrations turned out to be useful for work. Thanks to that, I got an offer from a major company to work as an exclusive illustrator. Thinking about it, maybe I should thank you for putting me in such a tough situation?
My ex-husband, having learned everything, collapsed on the spot, rendered speechless. There he cowered, visibly shocked. Moreover, realizing his impotence, he began to sob uncontrollably. Then, my mother, who had been watching, spoke a word.
I just can't forgive someone who treats my precious daughter horribly. So, I'm apologizing in advance. Don't get angry even if you face hardships from now on, okay?
My mother's eyes, as she said this, were sharp like those of a tiger spotting prime prey. Seeing my mother's eyes, Brian let out a silent scream and ran away from the spot. Later, from what I heard from acquaintances, my ex-husband, whose behavior at work became a problem, seemingly got laid off from the company as rumored. Moreover, having lost his income, he couldn't pay the mortgage and quickly had to let the house go. However, the house he finally bought was sold for not much, and living off the remaining money, life in a rundown apartment was the limit. Furthermore, when the lawyer I hired started discussing the divorce, he barely could pay the lawyer services fee, and apparently, he couldn't even afford to live in the shabby apartment he had just moved into. Now, it seems he is living as a homeless person, rummaging through trash, somehow staving off hunger. On the other hand, as for me, I quit the office part-time job I had been doing and decided to work full-time as an exclusive illustrator for a major company. From there, my name gradually became known, and now I'm a sought-after illustrator.
Jessica, here's your coffee.
Thank you, Mom. Thanks to my mother taking care of things around me, I can focus on my work. Life that was once like hell is now heavenly.
Mom, shall we go for steaks after a long time?
Oh. Are you sure?
Yeah. You always do so much for me.
Well then, I guess I'll take you up on your kind offer. I'm going to cherish this life.